to today's NECAP session on World Heart Day. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lavdisha and I'll be your moderator. I am part of Merrill Academy team and I am excited to be hosting this session today. In the times of COVID-19, cardiovascular disease patients are faced with double-edged threat. We don't know what course the pandemic will take in the future, but we do know that taking care of our heart right now is more important than ever. So to talk more about this topic, I am pleased to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Sharma, who is Director Interventional Cardiologist at Eternal Hospital, Jaipur. He is MD Gold Medalist and had completed DM Cardiology from AIIMS New Delhi. Sir has overall 20 years of clinical experience in which he got opportunity to serve in some of the top hospitals of the country, which includes AIIMS Delhi, Fortis Escorts Delhi, and Fortis Jaipur. His area of interest is complex coronary interventions. He has been awarded Top Cardiologist of Jaipur and Rajasthan several times. He has almost 20 national and international publications to his credits. He has been regularly invited as faculty by top national and international interventional cardiology meetings to share his immense expertise. Before I land the platform over to Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, I have few housekeeping items to cover about this session. First, today's webinar will be available on YouTube after the live session and you can access easily. Next, we do love to hear from you during our today's talk. If you have any question for our speaker, please feel free to type in the chat box and it will be taken up by Mr. Sudeep Khanna at the end of the session. We have Academy team with us who are the co-hosts for today's session. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome our faculty, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar. Over to you, sir.
Hello. Huh? Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
It's audible. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to have this Merrill Academy with the Eternal Hospital today for this Healthy Heart Awareness Program on the great occasion of World Heart Day, which is being organized by World Heart Federation every year on 29th of September. And thanks for the kind words of introduction, Lavdisha. And I've been to the Merrill campus once. It's a lush green campus and it's a beautiful, and really I'm looking forward to be there personally whenever it's possible. And for this heart health awareness program, first of all, I would like to tell about the gravity of situation and how important is the heart awareness program. When you talk about the heart disease, it's most of the time we talk about the cardiovascular disease. That means you listen about the blockages in the vessel of the heart or angina or heart attack. Other than cardiovascular disease, disease of the vessels, you can have a heart muscle disease, which we say is a cardiomyopathy. And at times it's a valvular heart disease. Then you have a dysfunctional valve, which can be aortic or mitral or the tricuspid or pulmonary valve. But moreover, most of the patients we see in the world is because of cardiovascular disease. And that is considered to be #1 killer in the world. You might have seen a Times of India paper today, and in that they mentioned in the Global Burden of Disease 2017, there was a multinational study and which revealed #1 killer in the world is cardiovascular disease. So we need to do something to address this problem, which is a global issue. And if you look into the Southeast Asia, this problem is much more significant as compared to all over the world. We are 3 times more prone as compared to the Western population. If you compare to United States or Europe, it's 3 times more common. And if we compare with the Japanese population, it's 7 times more common in India. Can you close it down? And when we look at the risk factors, what are the risk factors which contribute for the cardiovascular disease? We have two categories. One is a modifiable risk factors and other is a non-modifiable risk factors. When you talk about the modifiable risk factors, are the risk factors, if we do something about those risk factors, we can reduce the burden of cardiovascular disease. And when we talk about the non-modifiable risk factors, that means we can't do much, but we can adopt the healthy lifestyle. So if you talk about the modifiable risk factors, these are, number one is the diabetes. Number two is hypertension or high blood pressure. Number three is a smoking or tobacco chewing. Number four is a high cholesterol. We usually say is a hypercholesterolemia or dyslipidemia. So these are the risk factors which can be managed, which can be addressed. Like if you take care of your diabetes, you can reduce the risk of development of cardiovascular disease. If you take care of your blood pressure, then also you can reduce the development of heart disease. Similarly, the cholesterol and quitting smoking can help you in reducing the burden of cardiovascular disease. But there are other risk factors which are not in our hand. They are called as a non-modifiable risk factors. Amongst them, number one is a strong family history. Strong genetic history of cardiovascular disease in your family. Like if your parents, father or mother, or your siblings or brother or sister has a premature heart disease, less than 50 years of age, if they had a sudden cardiac death or heart attack, then the risk is quite high. And this is a non-modifiable risk factors. You cannot change your family history, but you can adopt the healthy lifestyle by which you can delay the development of cardiovascular disease. And other non-modifiable risk factors are advancing age. With the age, you tend to develop cardiovascular disease. Even if you don't have any risk factors, like after age of 60 years, you can have some kind of atherosclerosis. It's just as like water flowing in the pipe, you have some kind of a salt deposition inside the pipe. In the same way, the blood which flows in our vessel, the lipid which is there in the blood gets deposited inside the inner lining of the vessel. So after age of 60 years, you can have some kind of atherosclerotic plaque, and with 70 or 80 years of age, you can have a atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease without any risk factors. That is a non-modifiable. So advancing age is non-modifiable risk factor. Strong family history is a non-modifiable risk factor. So these factors can be taken care by healthy lifestyle, and we can delay, but we cannot prevent absolutely. Now, if we come for the what are the symptoms of heart disease? You can have two types of presentation. One we say is the acute coronary syndrome or acute heart attack. It's a common layman language. Acute coronary syndrome is a syndrome in which a patient comes with a sudden onset of progressive chest pain. When you talk about chest pain, most of it's retrosternal or center of the chest. That can be in the form of squeezing pain or heaviness in the chest, or like something is there, like the big stone on your center of the chest. And this heaviness can progress and can go to both the shoulders or both arms, right or left arm, related to any of the arm, or you can go to the jaw or the back of the neck or the back also. And it's usually a progressive nature, and it's associated with the sweating, extreme feeling of uneasiness, and feeling of impending doom. This is a clear symptom of acute coronary syndrome or a heart attack. And if you have that kind of a symptom, you should not mistake it for anything like acidity. Like heart symptoms, often it does occur after heavy meal. So large number of the patients, almost 30% of the individual, they mistook it for some indigestion or the acid peptic disease or acidity, which is not the case. Many of the cases, they don't even reach the hospital. They take the pantoprazole or the ranitidine or the Eno, but they don't have any response. And because of the delayed presentation or delayed first medical contact, they can collapse in between because of ventricular tachyarrhythmia, which is one of the mechanisms of sudden collapse after acute cardiac event, or they come little late. Like for the first few days, they take acidity medication and they present after 12 hours or 24 hours, and then they do come in contact with a medical facility, the heart is already compromised. The muscle has already gone. So you can't do much about those patients. We have seen number of the very young patient, less than 30 years of age. Those because of the age factor, the suspicion of the cardiac event was very low. So initially they took like acid medicine, and subsequently they came to the hospital and we found the heart pumping is just 20%. So that scenario is very grim, and it's very distressing for the family and for the patient. So always when you have a sudden onset of pain associated with sweating, uneasiness, and which is a progressive in nature, one should always consult nearby medical facility. And if the first medical contact EC is done, which is the first investigations after checking vitals like blood pressure, heart rate, and the ECG shows if there is an acute heart attack or major heart attack, which we say is ST elevation MI as a scientific term, then you should rush to the nearby cardiac center with a cath lab facility. And the best treatment in that acute heart attack situation is take the patient immediately to the cath lab and do a diagnostic angiography. Angiography is an investigation in which we visualize the coronary arteries by injecting the dye selective into left and right coronary artery. And once we localize the acute occlusion of the vessel with a thrombus, we suck out the thrombus with a thrombus suction, and then we put a stent to make it patent so that the clot doesn't form again. And this is known as a primary angioplasty for acute heart attack, and which is considered to be the gold standard worldwide for preventing the damage to the heart and decreasing the mortality, and by which in developed countries or developed world, the mortality with this acute heart attack has come down to 2 to 3% as compared to the developing world like India, which still is 5 to 6% or 8 to 10% in some areas. So we need to bridge this gap by putting a cath lab in all the major towns or the small towns also, and minimize the time for the angioplasty. Because if you have an acute heart attack, then one should not delay. Even the 2 in the night or 4 early in the morning, all the major towns with a cath lab facility, they do have a medical facility to do this primary procedure, which is a very rewarding and life-saving. This is all about the acute heart attack. Now the second presentation is kind of a stable angina, or in a common language, you say effort angina. In this situation, in a resting condition, you feel absolutely fine. You don't have any symptom. But when you walk a little brisk, or you walk uphill, or you climb upstairs, you have in the center of chest, you feel little choking, or you have a heaviness in the center of the chest. This is known as effort angina. At times, you don't have a typical heaviness or the chest discomfort. You just have a shortness of breath, which we say is an angina equivalent. And this is like a new development. Like someone says that 2 weeks back, I used to walk for 4 kilometers, and now even after walking for 500 meters, I do have suffocation or heaviness in the center of the chest, and that get relieved by the taking rest. And when I walk again, when I start again, then I again develop the center of chest heaviness, and which is a little unbearable. And I do have to take a little rest. This is a typical symptom of effort angina. And in that situation, one should consult definitely. And then the physician or cardiologist, they advise few set of investigation. Like they do a complete profile, which includes your fasting bloods, lipids, or glucose, blood counts, creatinine, ECG, echo, and treadmill. And if you have symptoms with a minimal walking, then we avoid doing treadmill test, because it might basically worsen the situation, and this angina can precipitate into acute heart attack. But if you can walk for 1 or 2 kilometers and then you have a discomfort, then we can ask the patient to go on a treadmill. And then in a treadmill, we assess the ECG changes with exercise, and also we adjust the exercise capacity of the patient. And if you can walk, if you can't walk for 3 or 5 minutes or 7 minutes, and then you have EKG changes which are progressive in nature, and you have a chest discomfort while walking on the treadmill, then we say the treadmill is positive. Then you have to go for the diagnostic angiography to find out what is the situation of blockages in your vessels. And on the basis of the angiography findings, you can decide what's the best in the interest of the patient. Whether it's a optimal medical therapy, means good lifestyle modifications and a few medications like aspirin, statin, beta blocker, distributor, or you have to go for the angioplasty in the 1, 2, or 3 vessels, or you have more extensive blockage and you might need a bypass surgery. So this is a situation with a stable symptom or effort angina, when you have a symptoms on exertion, not at rest. So these are two different type of different mode of presentation. One is the acute coronary syndrome, that is we say is the acute heart attack. Second is a stable symptoms or effort angina. Now comes what is the prognosis of acute heart attack in an Indian scenario as compared to Western population? I would like to clearly say that the prognosis, first of all, likelihood of having a heart attack in Indian population as compared to Western population, as I said, it's 3 times. Like a person with the age group of 60 years in India has 3 times more risk as compared to the Western population because of our genetics. And if we do suffer a heart attack, then likelihood of having a second heart attack is also 3 times more common in Southeast population as compared to Western population. So it occurs 3 times more common. And once you had a heart attack, I think some kind of a background noise. One has to mute the mic of one of the person has. So if you have a heart attack, so in a Western, as compared to Western population, as I said, 3 times more common. And if you suffer a heart attack, likelihood of having a second heart attack is also 3 times more common. And the prognosis thereby is worse as compared to Western population. So we have a tendency for heart attack more as compared to Western population. And if you do suffer, then likelihood of having a next heart attack is also more common. And the life expectancy also after suffering heart attack is less as compared to Western population. So by all these factors, all these facts, we have to be more vigilant, more careful to take care of our heart. And how can that be possible? By taking care of our all the major risk factors and adopting the heart healthy lifestyle. And now the question comes, what are the routine checkups or routine investigation which one has to do, and at what age they start checking up? Because the Southeast population is more prone and more predisposed for the cardiac events. So we say that the first checkup should be at the age of 25 years, just a routine checkup. That includes your fasting blood profile, like your fasting lipids, fasting glucose, complete blood counts, your creatinine, TSH, urine examination, X-ray, ECG, echo, and treadmill. And subsequently, you can get it done once in 5 years if you don't have a family history. Or after age of 40 years, you should get it once in a year. We say it's a healthy heart package or cardiac package, which incorporates all these investigations in one package. So this is very important to get yourself checked on a regular basis. After age of 40 years, once in a year, and between 25 to 40, every 5 years, if you don't have family history. If you have family history, then you should get it checked a little earlier. And now about how COVID pandemic has affected us. As we all basically, as globally, we are seeing big number of the cases like mortality. In times of India today, they mentioned that it has reached 1 million. That means 10 lakhs mortality has already occurred worldwide, and such a huge loss of precious lives. And in that, we all are aware that COVID has affected everyone, but more so the people who are more prone are advanced age, the age equal to more than 60, 65 years. Those who are diabetic, those are hypertensive and having a history of heart disease, or those who are having a chronic, those who are CKD patients with a dialysis, or the patients who have a history of malignancy are getting a chemotherapy and thereby they are immunocompromised. In this subset of patients, COVID is affected in a big way, but still we have seen a lot many young healthy patients, like those who are less than 40 years of age and having a COVID infection and without any risk factor. So it is affected in a whole spectrum, but the people who are more predisposed are patients who are diabetic and having some kind of a immunocompromise, and also a patient with heart disease. And how it affects the patient with the heart disease, this is a big question. like in a COVID scenario, we have seen that people have avoided their own acute cardiac symptom, like they are having a chest pain, but they are afraid of going to the medical facility because of fear of acquiring COVID infection. And because of that, in the initial months, like in the month of March or April, worldwide, many of the acute heart attack patients, they couldn't reach hospital or they reached a little late. We have lost a patient on the way to hospital because of fear of the COVID. They didn't come to contact the medical facility. This is how they got a worse outcome with acute heart attack. And other aspect is in the COVID patients, heart is affected by multiple factors. Number one, you have more clotting tendency inside your vessels. The clot formation can be there in any of the, whether it's a heart vessel or the vessel going to the brain or you a lung vessel, you can have a clot formation. Number two, because of COVID infection or during the your cytokine storm, the heart demand is more. Because of the inflammatory reaction, your heart contracts at a faster rate, so that myocardial oxygen demand increases. Number third factor is because of the compromised lung, there is a decreased oxygen carrying capacity in the blood. And because of low oxygen saturation, there's a low oxygen supply to the heart muscle also. And all these factors, they affect the heart condition, and there is a more chance of acute heart event or acute cardiac event. And because of that, the lot many patients, they come with the ECG abnormality and they can have a cardiac enzyme or troponin elevation. The other way by which the COVID affects your heart is by causing inflammation in the heart muscles. We say it's like myocarditis. So one way it causes, it affects the heart by causing an increased tendency for heart attack during COVID infection. Number two is by causing infiltration or the inflammation of the heart muscle, which is a cardiomyopathy. And number three is like like pulmonary thromboembolism. So all these different, they are mechanism by which your heart can be affected by the COVID. But the good part is this happens in a less than 5% of the cases, or 3 to 5% of cases. In majority of the population, COVID doesn't affect heart in a big way, or COVID doesn't affect as such. 85 to 90% of the people who get affected by the COVID, they are minimal symptomatic or they are asymptomatic. So most of the time you get away without any major sequelae. But in a 5 to 7% or 10 to 15% cases, you have to get admitted in the hospital for monitoring part or for the proper treatment, which are available now. And out of these, the 3 to 5% cases, you do have a complication like acute cardiac event or cardiac enzyme elevation or EC changes. Those patients require a little more care, and these patients also have a worse prognosis or high mortality. Now, after this, how COVID has affected our heart, now coming to the next very, very important aspect, how to avoid development of heart disease. What are the healthy lifestyle which we need to follow? Before that, I would like to emphasize on one important fact. This is just like at every 31st of December, we take a resolution to follow the healthy lifestyles or making the big changes in our lifestyle, like being a more strict about time management and having a good life and taking the healthy lifestyle. But within a month period of 30 to 45 days, the 90% of people, they lose track. So most important part is whatever I have said till now, or whatever I'm going to tell you about the healthy lifestyle, this needs to be incorporated in your lifestyle and religiously, and you have to follow it regularly. Then only you can make a big change in the development of, to prevent the development of cardiovascular disease. I would also like to tell you that in the United States, the cardiovascular disease was very at the peak in the 1960s and 70s. Then they had a public health initiatives, and they made a good policy, the public health policy, and they were very strict about enforcing the change in the lifestyle, about the diet and about exercise and about managing stress. And because of those strong adherence to the healthy lifestyle and the new development of cardiovascular medicine, the mortality and the overall prevalence of heart disease decreased substantially. But we, as in other aspects, we are also following the United States. We are 30 years behind, and we are going at a peak time, because by 2030 we might see a very high number of patients with the diabetes, with hypertension, and also with the cardiovascular disease. So we need to address this major problem, and we have to follow the healthy lifestyle. If you talk about the healthy lifestyle, the number one is a healthy diet. And what you say is a healthy diet, like this month only, we have a very good article in the Journal of American College of Cardiology about PESCO Mediterranean diet. So if you talk about the healthy diet, which has reduced the development of cardiovascular disease in a big way. And if you talk about the diet, the important part is number one, that it should have a lot of fibers. We Indians are, as we say, we are vegetarians, but all the nutritional value of the vegetarian diet is lost when we cook at a very high temperature, or we add a lot of oil and a lot of things to add to. So we should avoid too much of oil, and we should take a plenty of green leafy vegetables, high fiber. Number two is 3 to 4 servings of fruits, all seasonal fruits or different color fruits. So you should take plenty of green leafy vegetables. And when we come over the fat, you should minimize the use of oil. And you can use oil, but you should have 2 oils open, because our body needs a good fair balance of omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. So we can have 2 different kind of oil open at the same time. The few things we can cook on omega-3 and other omega-6, and oil which are healthy, like poor man's oil, which is a mustard oil. Mustard oil is a very good for cooking. We can have mustard oil, sunflower oil, olive oil, or rapeseed oil, or the groundnut oil. All oils are okay, but they should have a good proportion of omega-3 and omega-6. And coconut oil is very high in saturated fat that one should avoid. Palm oil and coconut should be avoided. And we come, when we talk about your deshi ghee, many people, they talk about whether we can consume deshi ghee. If your lipid values are within normal limits, and you are not sedentary, you are exercising like 40 times, you are walking or doing some aerobic activity, then you can eat some amount of your cow ghee. But if your cholesterol is a little high, or you have a strong family history, and you have a history of heart disease, and cholesterol is high, then you should avoid and minimize the use of saturated fat like ghee. And in the same way, you can use cheese in a limited amount. Cheese and butter you can use if your cholesterol levels are normal, you are physically active. And after these are green leafy vegetables, fruits, oil, ghee. Now I would like to come down to protein. Protein intake should be, it is a part of our, because muscle is made up of protein. So we should have a fair amount of protein intake on a daily basis, which is there in all kind of pulses. If you're non-vegetarian, you can have an egg, or in non-vegetarians, you can have a chicken or the fish, but red meat should be avoided. And red meat should be avoided. And fish, the seafood is very good for the health. Like I discussed about the PESCO Mediterranean diet, and that is based on the plant or green leafy vegetables plus seafood. Seafood is good because seafood or the fish or all these seafood have a very high quantity of omega-3 fatty acids, and which is a healthy fat and which neutralizes the bad fat. So seafood is good. Plenty of vegetables, plenty of fruits, and the decent amount of proteins. And carbohydrates should be minimized. Like refined carbohydrates should be minimized. Like you say, is a maida. All those like in India, there's a lot of festivals, so we cook many things on the maida, and that maida or refined carbohydrate is not good for health. You can have a whole wheat bread or whole wheat your chapati, and you have multigrain with a lot of fiber. So the fiber should be there in your chapati, and refined carbohydrate should be avoided. And in the same way, one should avoid excess of salt and excess of sweets. Like sugar should be avoided as far as possible. Even in non-diabetic should avoid too much of sugar. The minimum amount of sugar is okay, but avoid, because sugar is as big culprit as fat. So sugar intake should be minimized. Fat should be balanced. Fat should not be completely abolished. Healthy fat can be taken in a limited amount. And in the same way, the protein should be judiciously in a decent amount. And a lot of fibers. And this should be the balanced diet. And the same way, our diet, there is recently we got one intermittent fasting fundamental. Those who are obese can follow the intermittent fasting also, in which you can have fasting period of 10 to 12 hours. And in between, you can have plenty of water or the fruits and the two decent meals. That is about intermittent fasting. And after diet, healthy diet, I would like to tell you about the physical activity. Regarding physical activity, the simplest one is a brisk walk for 45 minutes, at least 5 to 6 days a week. And brisk walk is very much feasible because even if you are in a touring job, you can have a good sports shoes with you. You just put on your sports shoes and go for a walking, which you can do at any place. That's not an issue. That should not be a big challenge. So it's very much possible to spare 40 to 45 minutes of brisk walk in the morning. And if you can walk in the park, in a very close to the nature, this is the best one. Yeah, this is best what you can offer. In Europe or America, you can see the people are walking at the side of a stream or they are walking in the public park, which is very green. It's really stress relieving and very good physical activity for yourself. And this is applicable for all age groups, right from your children age group to the advanced age, 80 plus 90, they can walk in the park in the open. But during the COVID times, you have to take a little bit precautions in the public park. You have to maintain the safe distancing, and also you have to cover your face with a mask. And other than your brisk walk, you have a lot of activity. Like if you you can do a yoga, stretching. Yoga is a very good complete exercise, which has got a decent amount of stretching, and along with breathing exercise, and which also cool off your mind and make you literally relaxed and stable. And other physical activity, because a very monotonous kind of a walk and walking on the treadmill can be boring, you can have any kind of a sport of your choice. You can go for the swimming, or you can go for the playing your basketball or the volleyball or the tennis, and badminton, any kind of a sport or any sport of your choice you can pursue for 40 to 45 minutes. That will be a very decent aerobic activity to keep your heart healthy. And now after the diet, exercise or physical activity, then comes is a stress management. And stress management, the most important part is, number one, you should spare time for yourself. You should have time alone for yourself. We say it's a meditation. If it's possible, you should do a deep breathing exercise in sitting alone or with the greenery around. That's the best. And other thing is, the stress is also relieved by having a little time with your family in the evening, and one day on the weekend. You should spare time playing the indoor game with your kids and family. That is really relaxing. During COVID times, not many people have spent time with the family in the evening. They played indoor games like chess or Ludo or the Carom, and that really made them very stress-free. And this we have discussed in our doctor fraternity also. They are quite relaxed, spending time with the family in the evening, playing indoor games, which they never did after their post-graduation or the super specialty. And it was very relaxing. The other thing, other activity by which you can relax is by pursuing your hobby. The hobby can be anything. It can be gardening, or it can be a painting, or it can be any musical instrument of your choice, or it can be a singing. So all these activities one should incorporate. One of the hobby, which is other than your professional activity, should be there, which will really going to relax you. One of the hobby can be a book reading. You can read a lot of biographies or fiction, non-fiction, and that really break off your routine and you feel relaxed. The other thing by which you can have a stress management is, like I said, is a meditation is a very good. So by following your healthy diet, regular aerobic activity or regular exercise, and by taking care of your stress management part, which is a very essential, these three components, if you incorporate in your daily routine or daily activity, then you can have a less incidence of all lifestyle disease, which not only it's a cardiovascular disease, but your less incidence of diabetes, less incidence of hypertension, high cholesterol, heart disease, and also the cancer. By taking care of your diet, exercise, and stress management, the incidence of all these chronic illness can be reduced substantially. So this is how we can go ahead with a heart healthy lifestyle. Now I would like to thank all of you for paying the close attention and listening to me for that long. And now I'll be happy to answer if you have any questions or queries. Now the forum is open for discussion. Thank you.
Namaskar and good evening, sir. Thank you for the wonderful session. This is Sudeep Khanna from Merrill Academy. Based on your talk, we like to take some questions from the audience with your permission, sir.
Sure. Go ahead.
So the first question, sir, are patients with heart disease, diabetes or hypertension at increased risk to get coronavirus infection?
Yeah, patient with we say in general that heart patients are little prone for corona infection, definitely. Like a patient, the people who are advanced age, like I said, advanced age, patient with a history of heart disease in the past, with a low ejection fraction, and people who are chronic kidney disease with a dialysis, or patients with a chronic malignancy undergoing chemotherapy. These are the patient population who are more prone for COVID-19 infection. And not only the prone for infection, but if you develop infection, you can have a more complication as compared to the healthy population. And thereby the prognosis is little less favorable as compared to the healthy population, yes.
Okay, sir. Second question is, what about the reports about BP medications increasing severity of COVID-19?
BP medication, there was some apprehension about ACE inhibitor and ARB because your SARS-CoV-2 virus get attached to that same receptor in the lungs, ACE receptor. And these medication, ACE inhibitor and ARB also act through the same receptor. But we have got a plenty of data now, and there are a lot of publication in NEJM, New England Journal of Medicine, and also in the Lancet, that need not to worry about this anti-hypertensive medication ACE or ARB that doesn't affect the prognosis, because earlier there were apprehension that COVID-19 infection is more common in the patients who are taking your ACE or ARB. That is not the case, number one. Number two, taking this medication for hypertension during COVID infection also doesn't affect the prognosis. So rest assured, you don't have to worry about whatever medication you have been taking, you can continue safely. No issues about that.
The next question has been asked by Sayed ji. Are females equally at risk of heart disease?
Females, as a gender, females are protected as compared to the male. And this advantage goes off in a post-menopausal state. So before menopause, all the females are protected against heart disease. But if they develop the diabetes, that advantage is gone. So as a gender, the premenopausal females are protected against heart disease as compared to male population. But after menopause, incidence is almost same. The other factor I mentioned is if you have a diabetes before menopause, then this protective advantage is gone. Equal.
The next question has been asked by Jeevan ji. What is your suggestion to increasing the HDL level?
HDL is the best way is by doing exercise, by quitting smoking. Because lot many drugs which had been there in our clinical use are already gone out, because either niacin was one of the drug which we used to use, but it's gone out of favor. There was one more drug introduced almost a decade back, and but as of now, we don't recommend any drug except your physical activity and quitting, because smoking reduces the HDL and you should quit smoking, and doing exercise increases HDL. That is the best way. Yeah.
The next question has been asked by Mr. Ketan ji. What are the common symptoms of unhealthy heart? When should I get diagnosed for the heart function?
Oh, that we discuss in very much detail.
Okay, sir.
That, the number one is for a checking up. You're talking about the stable symptoms, because if you have an acute coronary syndrome heart attack, you have to rush to the hospital. There is no other no other way. But for assessing yourself whether you can have a cardiac symptoms, I told that it's effort in jhana. If you walk brisk or you walk uphill and you have suffocation or the discomfort in the center of the chest, which is a retrocessional chest heaviness or the pain, or you feel short of breath, and which is progressively increasing in nature. Like you have earlier, you can walk for 3-4 kilometers. Now you cannot even walk for 1 kilometer, and you are feeling short of breath or you have heaviness in the chest. These are the stable symptoms or stable or effort in jhana symptoms. It could be a effort in jhana, and for that you should get yourself checked by doing all the routine fasting blood profile and also your ECG, echo, and treadmill test to have a clarity about the development of disease.
Manish sir has asked, how long does one continue with statins post angioplasty? I understand blood thinners are lifelong.
Yeah, statins should also be given lifelong. Statin is as important as aspirin because it acts as a plaque passivation. It avoids the development of recurrent events, and it's as important as aspirin. Once you have a heart disease, whether it's a non-critical or minimal plaquing, or you have undergone angioplasty or bypass surgery, you have to take statin lifelong. Your dose can vary depending on the lipid values, but a small dose of statin should be taken lifelong.
Okay, sir. And next question is, what is the connection of a conduction system in heart disease?
What is the connection of conduction system in the heart disease?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, conduction system is, if you talk about the overall heart, the blood vessel is just like your pipeline, your plumbing business. And your conduction system, electric system is just like electricity in your heart. So our heartbeat starts in the SA node, which is located in the right atrium, and which beats as the heart is formed during embryonic life. It start firing, and it gives the heart beating. And from SA node, the electrical activity comes down to the AV node, and from AV node through his bundle, there are right and left bundle, which activates the left right ventricle, which are the main pumping chamber of the heart. So this is all about electrical conduction system. You can have many kind of electrical disturbances, like you can have a sinus slowing. That means your impulse is not generating, which is sinus node dysfunction, it requires a pacemaker. The other thing is sinus is firing, but it's not going through AV node. That means the upper chambers of atrium, they are contracting at the AT rate, but it's not conducting into the ventricle, which are main chamber. That means the AV block. And also we need a pacemaker. So for all electrical disturbances, which are not because of any reversible factors, like drugs or metabolic disease, if they are excluded, then they need a pacemaker for maintaining the electrical condition. Yes.
Labdi madam has asked, is the heart disease hereditary?
Yeah, heart disease, the premature heart disease is hereditary, and if you have a strong family history of any your siblings or your parents dying suddenly before the age of 50 years, there could be acute cardiac event, or at times it's arrhythmic. Many heart diseases are hereditary. Number one, cardiovascular disease is hereditary. That means the blockage in the vessels, and that can cause arrhythmia or hereditary. Number two is a cardiomyopathy, like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy or dilated cardiomyopathy, also hereditary. Number three is your arrhythmia. We say a long QT syndrome. They are also hereditary when you have sudden cardiac death in the very early adulthood. So heart diseases are hereditary. All different kind of a heart disease. When you talk about the cardiovascular disease or heart attacks we have discussed, this is also hereditary. If you are any of the member, whether it's your parents or your siblings, they died suddenly and because of heart attack, then the siblings they should take care, or next generation should take care of having a very healthy lifestyle. But they can delay development of the disease, but they can prevent it 100%.
Patel Forum Ji has asked, if any female is suffering from diabetics, what should she do to keep her health healthy?
As we discussed, you have to follow a heart healthy lifestyle. You should have a very good or strict control over your diet. Take plenty of fibers, and you should, as a diet, out of 100, if you talk about appetite of 100, you should take 70% of total appetite, and that should contain a lot of fibers, legumes, You can use your dry fruits like almond and your walnuts are good for health. Plenty of fruits which are less in sugar and lot of fiber. So balanced diet, regular exercise, keep your balanced weight, healthy weight. Keep an eye on your body mass index, your body weight, and do exercise regularly and take care of your diets. By that, you can control your diabetes, blood pressure, and heart disease in one go.
Sir, one of the most important question one of our participant has asked. Sir, any way to avoid cardiac arrest through change in lifestyle post 50 age?
Yes, definitely. If you talk about the cardiac arrest is a ventricular arrhythmia, tachyarrhythmia, which happens immediately after acute cardiac event or acute heart attack. So if you avoid the development of cardiovascular event, you can avoid development of cardiac arrest. And for avoid development of cardiac event, you have to follow the healthy lifestyle. Same diet, exercise, and stress-free lifestyle. You have to exercise, you have to have healthy diet, you have to take time out for yourself, pursue your hobby, and all the best.
So last question, why we Indians have high triglycerides?
Why the Indians have high triglycerides? High triglycerides because of insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is quite a frequent in our Southeast Asian, especially in an Indian scenario. And that is because of our genes and also because of our sedentary lifestyle. Because we have a lot of festivals, we are eating here and there, and like our wedding season, you have to go 3 times for functions. We have a very, very lavish lifestyle. In Rajasthan, we have 1 or 2 festivals every month. So we usually find ways to entertain ourselves and having a rich food. And we do enjoy rich food. And that rich food, if you don't exercise or if you are not physically active, that really harms you. But if you are physically active, like in the older days, almost 5 decades back, people used to walk for 10 to 20 kilometers daily to do a job or to fetch a water or some for daily livelihood. Then it's okay. You can have a good diet, but you are physically relatively sedentary and less active, and then you want to eat your lot of parathas and samosas. That's not possible. You have to exercise hard to afford that.
Okay, sir. Last question for the day, sir. Mr. Ketan Misty Saab has asked, nowadays there are many videos which tells us to drink warm water whenever you feel thirsty to prevent many diseases. Does it work really, or do we need to control our diet for healthy living?
No. The diet is separate and the water intake is separate. The water is the best drink in the world. The drink which you can recommend to everyone is water. No other sugary drink one should consume. No, your colas and all those soft drinks are totally no. One should drink plenty of water, and warm water during this corona-like situation or during winters is very good. And it really it's been recommended not only in your yoga and your allopathy, your Ayurveda also. The warm water is being recommended. So during winter months, warm water is okay. During like a pandemic or respiratory illnesses, warm water is okay. And in general, during this summertime, it's not possible to drink a warm water. You can drink water of a room temperature. That is equally good. And one should drink at least 3.5 liters of water, 3 to 3.5 liters of water daily, because water really cleanses us and it makes us free from many of the diseases. It's a good drink.
Yeah, due to time constraint, we would like to end the question and answer session here. But definitely, we'll try to cater all the questions after the sessions through emails. Thank you very much, sir. And I would request Yogendra Sani, sir, for conveying the vote of thanks, sir. Sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sab. On behalf of Merrill and Merrill Academy, I thank you for taking time out for this. Excellent detailed explanation on the hard day. Especially, this was very, very important for our employees also. I'm sure the audience has been benefited for your question answer session, which you have very nicely explained. Each and every one we so benefited with all the questions. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate your the passion for all good work. Thank you so much on behalf of Merrill and Merrill Academy. Thank you so much for taking time out. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. It was great. Definitely, I would like to appreciate the efforts from the Merrill Academy and for their employees. It's a very nice gesture because not every organization does this on World Heart Day. And I wish you all a very happy World Heart Day, and also to incorporate all these small changes that you all were already aware, but we don't follow it. Many things we already know, but we need to re-emphasize, and that is what is required. Re-endorse all those healthy lifestyle factors or features, and if you incorporate those, then we can really reduce your cardiovascular disease burden in the near future in our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, team.
Thank you, sir.